The glass walls of Halcyon Enterprises towered like a fortress of ambition, reflecting the city skyline in cold steel and mirrored windows. Somewhere on the 32nd floor behind a desk that had cost more than most people's cars sat Victoria Langford, the company's 32-year-old CEO. Sharp mind, sharper heels. Reputation brutal, but fair. Victoria didn't do mistakes. She was raised by a father who once said, "You don't get to cry if you want to run the world." And she hadn't cried since she was 12. So when she said, "I want a new executive assistant," her HR team knew better than to waste her time. Dozens of resumes were screened, processed, background checked, and reduced to 5 pristine candidates. But her best friend and unfortunately her VP of strategy decided she needed some levity. Sabrina Clark, bold as always, slid a 6th resume into the pile with a smirk. "Just for fun, pick him and you'll have the best 2 weeks of your life." "What is this?" Victoria asked, already annoyed. "You'll see, I dare you." The resume was underwhelming. Named Daniel Grant, experience freelance logistics coordinator, former warehouse manager, education state college dropout, current role full-time single dad. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "This is a joke." "Exactly," Sabrina said, "but a well-written one." There was a handwritten note attached to the resume. "I may not have boardroom experience, but I've managed screaming toddlers and organized a daycare fundraiser during a snowstorm. If you can survive preschool drop-offs, you can survive anything. I make coffee schedules and dinosaurs out of paper. Give me 2 weeks. If I don't impress you, I'll walk away with grace and leave you a tray of cookies." Daniel Grant. Victoria should have tossed it. She didn't. Maybe it was the handwriting. Maybe it was the line about dinosaurs. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because in a world of polished veneers and buzzwords, someone had finally spoken, like a human. So she called him in. 2 days later, the conference room was bright, clinical, and twice the size it needed to be. Victoria sat at the far end of the long table, a tablet in one hand, espresso in the other. He walked in tall, slightly disheveled, carrying a backpack that didn't quite match his worn blazer. But his eyes were steady, his shoulders squared. He smiled like a man who knew this was a long shot, but had decided to shoot anyway. "Miss Langford, thank you for the opportunity. You're punctual," she noted. "That's rare. I have a 6-year-old," he said. "Punctuality is the difference between peace and morning chaos." She smirked against her better judgment. "You realize this is a Fortune 500 company?" "Not a daycare, I do," he replied. "But I've managed logistics for a chain of distribution centers. Juggled 2 jobs while keeping a kid alive and thriving. Time, stress, budget, people. I've done all of it. Just not in a suit." She studied him. Not the suit, but the eyes. Honest, calm. "Why apply to be an executive assistant?" "Because I need work that respects my time as a father, and because I want to grow. I've been behind the scenes long enough. I want to learn from someone who doesn't miss." She blinked. "Are you trying to flatter me?" "No," he said. "I'm trying to tell you I watch interviews. You're a machine, but I think machines need humans around them. I can be that human." She didn't laugh. But she didn't send him away either. Later that day. "You didn't?" Sabrina gasped. "I did," Victoria said, reviewing his background again. 2 weeks. He starts Monday. You hired him on a trial basis. You know you just hired a single dad with zero corporate polish to sit outside your office, right?" "Yes," Victoria said. "And if he fails, it'll be your fault." But something in her voice had changed. Not quite curiosity, not yet admiration, but a crack in the fortress. Monday, day 1. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early wearing a tie that clearly hadn't been tied in a while. His son's drawing a green dinosaur on blue paper peeked from his planner like a reminder of who he was doing this for. Victoria noticed it, didn't say a word. Until lunchtime when she found a cup of green tea on her desk, brewed exactly the way she liked it, and a sticky note. "Read your second quarter speech from last year. You mentioned this tea helps you think. Thought I'd contribute to Q3. She blinked. No one remembered that, not even her. For a woman who thrived on control, Victoria Langford found herself in unfamiliar territory. It had been 4 days since Daniel Grant started as her executive assistant, and nothing had caught fire. No missed meetings, no coffee disasters, no awkward silences. In fact, he was good. Too good. Her appointments were now precisely color-coded. Her driver was early, not late, and mysteriously her Spotify playlist now opened with tracks that matched her mood. She hadn't told him her favorite songs, but somehow Bittersweet Symphony played just as she was preparing for a brutal merger negotiation. It felt orchestrated. Still, she refused to admit he'd impressed her. Yet. But then Friday came, and with it, the boy. It started with a soft knock on her office door. Not Daniel's usual sharp three-tap rhythm. This was small, hesitant. Before she could say anything, the door opened a crack. A head peeked in freckles, brown hair eyes that looked eerily like Daniel's, but with a child's unfiltered curiosity. "Hi," the boy whispered. "Are you the boss lady?" Victoria blinked. "I suppose I am." "Cool. My name is Max. I'm here with Dad. He said I could sit outside if I didn't talk to anyone. But I got bored. Can I draw on your window?" Her jaw almost dropped. Behind him, Daniel rushed in, clearly flustered. "Max, bud, what did I say about interrupting?" "Sorry, Dad," Max said, turning sheepishly. "But the window looks like a perfect dinosaur habitat." Victoria blinked again. Her 32nd floor corner office with its $12,000 privacy glass was apparently perfect for T-Rex reenactments. "It's all right," she said, slowly studying the boy. "He's polite," usually Daniel muttered. There was a scheduling error. His school had a half day today, and I couldn't find backup. I was going to keep him quiet in the lounge and teach him what corporate espionage, she asked deadpan. Daniel smiled awkwardly. "Only if he gets an offer better than mine." Victoria sighed. She should have sent them both home. But something about the boy's wide-eyed honesty made her pause. "Fine, but he draws quietly. No glue sticks, no glitter, and definitely no dinosaurs on the glass." Max saluted her. "Yes, CEO, ma'am." She didn't laugh, but she almost did. 1 hour later, Victoria looked up from her investor brief and caught a movement through the frosted glass. Tiny dinosaurs, dozens of them, all sketched in erasable whiteboard marker, perfectly spaced across the glass wall of her outer office. And Max sitting calmly at Daniel's desk, headphones on, tongue out slightly as he drew a stegosaurus next to a pie chart. "He's remarkably focused," she said aloud. Daniel, walking past with a coffee in hand, chuckled. "Give him some markers and he turns into an artist slash scientist slash budding paleontologist." "Isn't he bored?" "He's been through worse," Daniel replied gently. "Boredom's not so bad." Something shifted in her. Just a flicker. She watched as Max showed his drawing to an intern passing by. The intern, stressed and hunched from spreadsheet, hell smiled. Actually smiled. Victoria raised an eyebrow. This child was disarming her entire floor. Later that day, just before closing, she found a second note on her desk. This time the handwriting was loopier with some backward letters. "Thank you for letting me draw on the window. I tried not to mess it up. I think you're a good boss, lady. You didn't yell or nothing." "That's pretty cool." Max attached was a post-it of a tiny dinosaur wearing high heels and holding a coffee mug that read "Numbered 1 CEO." Victoria stared at it for a full minute. She didn't know what hit her more, the innocence or the fact that no adult in her entire company had ever given her a drawing that made her smile. That evening, Sabrina dropped by her office, saw the drawing, and raised her brows. "Oh no," she grinned. "He cracked you. He did not. You laminated it. You laminated a dinosaur." "For documentation," Victoria snapped. "That's what assistants do. Except that's not his assistant. That's his son." Victoria didn't answer. She looked out at the city instead. "Did you know he's a full-time single parent?" "Yeah," Sabrina said. "Most guys get babysitters. Nannies. He does it himself." Victoria didn't admit it, but that fact struck her. In this world of excuses and delegation, Daniel showed up to life, to his kid, to her office, and made everything work without complaint. She'd worked with executives who crumbled over broken coffee machines. This man handled 6-year-old emergencies before 9 a.m. and still delivered her reports with color-coded tabs. It wasn't just competence, it was character. That weekend, she told herself she wouldn't think about him. But as she sipped her wine over a cold salad at home, Victoria glanced at the laminated dinosaur pinned beside her calendar. And she smiled. Something was changing. She didn't know what, but it had freckles. and carried markers. And maybe, just maybe, it came with the man who said, "I'll leave you cookies if I don't impress." He hadn't left cookies. He'd left something harder to forget. Monday morning. The building buzzed as usual. Elevators dinged, interns ran with overpriced coffees, and the C-suite conversations rose and fell like waves of curated chaos. But to Victoria Langford, something felt off. Not bad, just different. It wasn't the quarterly numbers they were up. It wasn't the board they were quiet. It was Daniel. More precisely, it was the effect Daniel had begun to leave on her space. Her desk had a subtle flower arrangement, not flashy, just a few fresh-cut white tulips changed every Friday. No one claimed responsibility. Her coffee, previously a science of guesswork from assistants past, was now always exactly right. Almond milk, steamed cinnamon, dusted lightly. Never too hot, never late. Her days ran like clockwork. But more than that, the office felt lighter. No case, no missed notes, no forgotten files, just calm, steady human energy. And for someone like Victoria, whose life had been precision-tuned for efficiency, it was quietly, maddeningly comforting. Midday. They sat across from each other, reviewing next week's schedule. Daniel's tablet was open, her meetings meticulously organized, but he kept glancing at the door. Victoria noticed. "You're distracted. Max has a field trip today. First time he's ridden a bus without me." Victoria didn't respond immediately, but she softened. "You worried?" "No," he said, then paused. "Yeah, a little. He's got asthma. Sometimes it flares up when he's excited or nervous." She didn't know why she asked, but the words slipped out. "Who's he excited to tell afterward?" Daniel looked up. His eyes, usually playful, now had something else behind them. A glint of weight, of love, of loneliness. "Me," he said. "Always me." They went back to scheduling, but the conversation lingered in Victoria's mind. She had calendars full of client dinners, investor briefings, luxury retreats. But no one in her life she was first for. No one who rushed to tell her good news. When had she stopped building a life that had space for that? Later that week. Tuesday afternoon. Victoria emerged from a brutal budget meeting. Executives bickered numbers, bled red, and the forecast looked grim. She returned to her office, dropped her folder, and sighed louder than she meant to. Daniel peeked in, offering a chocolate bar without a word. She took it. Silence passed between them like something sacred. Then he spoke. "Want to vent?" She stared at him. "You're my assistant, not my therapist. The best assistants know the difference." Another pause. Then, against her better judgment, they cut R&D by 18%. "The CFO says it's temporary. We both know that means permanent." Daniel leaned on the doorframe. "You built this company on innovation. Cut that, and they cut the future." Victoria blinked. "You read the investor deck. You left it open on the printer." "I skimmed." "You skimmed 87 pages. He shrugged. "Max was at swim practice. I had time, she couldn't help it." She smiled. "You're annoyingly competent. You hired me. Must say something about your instincts." She laughed. It was small, but it was real. Friday evening. Post hours. Most of the office had cleared out. Victoria was still typing, catching up on emails, when she heard music, soft, distant. Curious, she stepped out and found Daniel dancing. Well, trying to. Max was giggling in the open lounge area, showing his dad some sort of TikTok dance feat, flailing, arms flapping. Daniel tripped over a chair leg but recovered like a champ. Max fell over laughing hysterically. "I told you, your knees don't work like mine." "They used to," Daniel said dramatically. "Then I turned 30 and everything broke." Victoria didn't mean to smile or to watch, but she did. And for a moment she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Joy. Raw, unscripted, imperfect joy. Daniel finally noticed her. "Sorry, he got bored waiting for me to finish an expense report." "He seems to be surviving just fine," Victoria replied. Max looked up. "Hey, boss lady, I taught Dad the time traveler shuffle. Is that legal?" "Barely," Max grinned. Victoria walked over, arms crossed, watching them. Then she surprised them both. "Show me." "What?" Max blinked. "I said show me the time traveler shuffle." "You'll dance," Max gasped. "Don't push your luck," she said. "But I'll watch." Once, Max beamed like he'd been knighted. And Daniel, he looked at her with something new. Not flirtation, not surprise, but wonder. Later that night, her apartment. Victoria sat alone on her sleek, spotless couch, the city glittering beyond the penthouse glass. She sipped wine, scrolled her phone, paused. There it was, a candid photo someone had snapped in the office lounge. She was laughing. Max was mid-spin. Daniel looked like a man caught between pride and panic. She had never seen herself look that alive. She stared at it for a long time, and somewhere deep inside something began to stir. Not desire, not fantasy, but the terrifying possibility that the life she had meticulously built might be missing something real. Thursday, 3:52 p.m. Thunder cracked over the city like a whip. The sky turned steel-gray sheets of rain pounding down the office windows. Traffic outside slowed to a crawl, and the storm rolled in like something from an end-of-days movie. Inside Halcyon Tower, everything was as precise as usual, except for the air. Tense, thick, charged. Victoria sat in her glass-walled office, fingers flying over her keyboard. An investor deck was due. A competitor had just dropped a bombshell product. The day was chaos. Then came the knock. Not Daniel's knock. A frantic, uneven knock. She turned and froze. It was Daniel. He was pale. His tie was off. His voice was tight. "I need to leave." Victoria blinked. "Excuse me, it's Max. School called. He had an asthma attack. The nurse says he's stable, but they're taking him to County General. I have to go." Her mind kicked into protocol mode. "Go, of course. I'll handle rescheduling the board call." But Daniel hesitated. "I didn't mean I'm sorry, I just—" "Daniel," she said firmly, "your son comes first. Go." For the first time since she'd met him, he looked vulnerable, rattled, and it did something to her. He nodded, almost bowed, and then 4:40 p.m. The rain didn't let up. Victoria tried to focus. She truly did. But her eyes kept darting to the digital clock on the wall and her phone. Nothing, no update, not even a text. She told herself it wasn't her business, that she didn't get involved in personal lives, that lines were important. But still, she remembered Max's tiny voice. "You didn't yell or nothing. That's pretty cool." And that ridiculous dinosaur drawing still taped to the inside of her planner. She grabbed her coat. 5:12 p.m., County General Pediatric Wing. Hospitals always smelled like disinfectant and unspoken fear. Victoria stepped out of the elevator, heels clicking against tile. Her tailored coat was soaked at the edges. She hadn't even realized how hard it was raining. She found him sitting on a plastic bench, head in hands, damp hair clinging to his forehead. "Daniel." He looked up when he heard her. "Victoria, I had a canceled call." "You came here because of a canceled call." "Coincidence," she said softly. "How is he?" Daniel exhaled, ran a hand down his face. "He's okay. Still wheezing a little, but the meds are working. They're keeping him overnight for observation." Victoria nodded, sat beside him. Silence. Then, without looking at her, "You know I was there when his mom left." She blinked. He didn't notice. He was looking at a water stain on the ceiling. Max was 3. She said she wasn't cut out for motherhood. Said she needed to go find herself. "I told her I'd handle things." "That's a lot." "Yeah," he said, "but I'd do it again. Every hard thing, every sleepless night, every ridiculous peanut butter sandwich." "That kid, he's my reason." Victoria swallowed something rising in her throat. "You're a good father." Daniel looked at her for the first time. "Thank you. That means more than you think." She didn't break eye contact. "I think I understand more than you think." Sudden 0 p.m. Hospital cafeteria. They sat in the corner with sandwiches and terrible coffee. Max was sleeping in his room, and Daniel had refused to leave unless it was for 5 minutes max. Victoria had surprised him by offering to join. "The sandwich is awful," he muttered. "You're not supposed to enjoy it," she replied. "It's part of the hospital rite of passage." He chuckled, then grew serious. "You didn't have to come." "I know, so why did you—" She hesitated. "Because you show up for people, Daniel. Quietly, without asking for anything. I thought someone should show up for you." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "You're not who I thought you were. Let me guess. You expected a designer-heeled dictator with an espresso addiction." You forgot ice in her veins, she laughed. It was small, tired, but real. You're not what I expected either, she said. No, I thought you were a joke. He smiled at her honesty, then nodded. So did I, for a while. 8:23 p.m. The ride home. The storm had eased. The driver navigated them through wet streets under flickering traffic lights. Daniel sat beside her in the back seat, quiet. His suit was wrinkled, his shirt damp from the day. She'd never seen a man look so exhausted and yet so grounded. There was something powerful in that, in the way he'd put his entire life on hold for a single human being, in the way he didn't complain about it, didn't perform it. It wasn't just love, it was honor. And Victoria, for all her strength and status, suddenly wondered, when was the last time anyone had loved her like that truly? Selflessly. She turned to him. If you ever need time or backup with Max, you can ask. You don't have to carry it alone. Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft. That's the kindest thing anyone said to me in a long time. She didn't answer. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that says I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. Monday morning, 1 week later. Everything was the same, and yet it wasn't. The glass doors of Halcyon still whispered open at 7 a.m. sharp. Victoria still arrived before her assistants. Her almond milk cinnamon coffee still waited hot perfect. But now behind that desk outside her office sat a man she no longer saw as just her assistant. Daniel had come back after Max's hospital stay, without fanfare, without drama. Just a quiet nod and a return rhythm. But something in their dynamic had shifted. A subtle warmth, unspoken understanding. A current between them that neither acknowledged, but both felt. 9:23 a.m. Strategy meeting, 18th floor. Victoria sat at the head of the conference table surrounded by execs pitching product roadmaps and quarterly goals. Her gaze flicked to the hallway. Daniel was outside waiting with her notes. A week ago, she wouldn't have noticed. Today, she did. He caught her glance and smiled, not the rehearsed corporate kind, but the sort of smile you give someone who's seen you at your worst, and stayed. Her heart thumped unexpected and unwelcome. She looked away, focused. But even as spreadsheets filled the screen, her mind drifted. To peanut butter sandwiches, to hospital benches, to a boy who called her boss lady, to a man who never asked for space but somehow carved out his own inside her world. That afternoon, her office. Victoria stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the skyline blur in the late-day haze. Daniel knocked once, then entered. Board call in 10 minutes. I printed the updated slide deck. Thank you, he hesitated, lingering by the desk. You okay? She turned slowly. Why do you ask? Because you've been reading the same sentence for 6 minutes, he said, nodding at her screen. She sighed. You're observant. I'm a dad. I have to be. She chuckled, then frowned. This is dangerous. What is this, us? Daniel's brow furrowed just slightly. I'm still your assistant, Victoria, and I'm still your boss, I know. But I notice things now, she admitted, like how you hum when you type, how you talk to yourself when you are deep in thought, how you make space for everyone but never ask for any yourself. He didn't deny it. And you hate that, I don't know, she whispered. Another silence stretched between them, taut, electric. Finally, Daniel stepped back. Then let's not name it yet. Let's just keep showing up. She stared at him, and for once she didn't feel the need to control the moment. Wednesday, after hours. The office was nearly empty. Victoria was finalizing her week's briefings. Daniel was cleaning up the supply cabinet. And Max, who'd arrived late after school, was sitting cross-legged on the carpet building a cardboard time machine out of an old delivery box and tape. Victoria knelt beside him. What year are you going to? Max grinned. 2053. I'll be a robot inventor. Dad'll be old but cool. What about me? Max tilted his head. You'll be the lady president of the moon. Victoria laughed genuinely openly. Daniel glanced over and smiled to himself. Max turned back to his machine. You and Dad could get married, then we'd be a super team. Victoria froze. So did Daniel. Kids had no filters. Daniel cleared his throat. All right, Space Commander. Let's not plan weddings before dinner. Max shrugged. Just saying. Later that night. Her apartment. Victoria stared at the ceiling. The penthouse was quiet, sterile even. Everything in its place, not a pillow out of line, but all she could think about was cardboard time machines. and cinnamon coffee, and the fact that for the first time in years she looked forward to Mondays. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also real. Friday, 6:01 p.m. She stepped out of the elevator. Daniel was packing up. Max was already asleep on the couch, curled up in his hoodie. Victoria watched for a beat. Long day. He had a spelling test, gave it everything he had. He misspelled anything chrysanthemum. But I'll allow it, she chuckled. Then impulsively she asked dinner. Daniel blinked. You're asking us to dinner? Just dinner, she said. Not a moon wedding. He laughed, and in that laugh she heard the answer before he even spoke. Yeah, dinner sounds good. Friday, 6:45 p.m. The restaurant was not what Victoria expected. She had chosen something modest, charming even. A quiet Italian place tucked between two brownstones on 7th Street. Nothing with valet parking or 3 sommeliers. Just warm lighting, wood-fired ovens, and checkered tablecloths that looked like they hadn't changed in 20 years. Daniel looked around as they entered, carrying a sleepy Max over one shoulder. Wow, you didn't pick the kind of place where the napkins come folded like swans. Victoria smirked. Don't get used to it. I just thought Max would like the pizza oven. I'd like anything that isn't microwave nuggets, Daniel said, lowering Max into a chair. The boy yawned, stretching. Are we on the moon yet? Max mumbled. Not yet, Commander, Victoria replied with a smile. But this place has cheese sticks. Max's eyes snapped open. I'm awake. 7:05 p.m. Over breadsticks. Daniel handed Max a kid's menu and a crayon. Victoria watched them in quiet fascination. The ease between them. The way Daniel let Max speak but guided his energy with just a glance or a hand on the shoulder. There was no chaos, just presence. He's different when he's with you, she said quietly. Daniel looked up. Different good or different terrifying? Different safe. He softened. I hope so. That's the one thing I always want him to feel. She stirred her iced tea. You've raised him alone all this time since he was 3. No family nearby. My parents passed years ago. Her side was never really in the picture. He looked at her. It's just us. She nodded, thoughtful. That's rare and beautiful. It's a lot of peanut butter and a lot of improvising, he said with a grin. Still, she added, you didn't let it harden you. Oh, I've been tired, broken, scared out of my mind, but I've never regretted it. He paused, then added quietly but with conviction, Max gave me purpose. She looked at him, really looked. And for once she didn't see the assistant or the single dad. She saw a man who chose love over ease, and something in her shifted again. 7:38 p.m. The moment. Max had fallen asleep in the booth beside his dad, a slice of pepperoni pizza untouched on his plate. Daniel adjusted his hoodie like a blanket, brushing a curl from his forehead. Victoria watched her chest tight. You're good at that, she whispered. What being his world? Daniel looked up, and for a long moment they just stared. There were 1,000 things she could say, should say, about professionalism, about boundaries, about the rules that kept lines from blurring. But none of it came. Only dinner was nice. It was. I liked this, you, him, all of it. He nodded slowly. Me too. Then he leaned forward just slightly, just enough that if she met him halfway, their lips would brush. She hesitated. A breath, a beat. Then Max stirred and the moment vanished like steam. 8:12 p.m. on the curb. The rain had stopped. The air smelled like summer pavement. Daniel strapped Max into the back seat of his car. Victoria stood nearby, coat folded over one arm. You didn't have to come tonight, he said, stepping around to face her. I know. But I wanted to. Was this a date, he asked carefully. She exhaled, considering. I don't know, maybe not yet, but it was something, he nodded. And if something becomes more, then I'll figure out how to navigate it without losing the assistant who makes perfect coffee and teaches dinosaurs how to moonwalk. He laughed. That's a very specific skill set, which makes you irreplaceable. Their eyes met again. No kiss, no grand confessions, just a look. The kind of look that says, not yet, but maybe. Soon, that night. Her apartment, Victoria opened her planner. There it was. The dinosaur Max had drawn weeks ago, still taped in place, still smiling in high heels. And for the first time in years, She didn't open her laptop. She didn't check her schedule. She didn't run through investor pitches in her mind. She just let herself sit, still, full, hopeful, Monday morning. Back at the office, the rhythm returned. Or at least it pretended to. Victoria's heels clicked down the corridor, her coat billowing behind her like armor. Her face was calm, professional. She nodded at assistants, exchanged brief greetings, slid into meetings with practiced ease. But inside, everything was out of tune. She couldn't stop replaying the dinner, the look, the almost kiss. Worse, she couldn't decide if she regretted not leaning in or if she was relieved. Across the floor, Daniel sat at his desk typing, calm, unreadable. He hadn't mentioned the dinner either, not the conversation, not even Max's comment about getting married on the moon. It was like the moment had been folded up, tucked away in some drawer between "Don't go there." And what were we thinking? But it lingered. It haunted. Tuesday, 11:40 a.m. They were standing together in the elevator heading down to meet a client, just the two of them. Daniel broke the silence first. Max asked why you didn't come to breakfast on Sunday. Victoria blinked. I wasn't invited, that's what I told him. He said that's a dumb reason. She smiled faintly. He's not wrong, a beat. Then, about the other night, he said, voice lower, her heart thumped. It was nice. Yeah, silence. We don't have to talk about it if... But what if I want to, she interrupted, surprising herself. He turned to her. Then talk. She hesitated. Then the elevator dinged, doors opening to the chaos of the lobby. Phones ringing, shoes squeaking, clients waiting. Conversation over, but not ended. That evening, late, Victoria stayed behind to finish her report. Daniel did too under the pretense of organizing the Q-Do materials. But when Max appeared in her doorway, sleepy and dragging a blanket behind him, all pretense faded. Boss lady, he mumbled, do you like my dad? She looked up, caught mid-email. Why do you ask? 'Cause he looked at you funny after dinner. She blinked. Funny. Like the way he looks at cake, but more nervous. She stifled a laugh. Well, she said carefully, your dad is very easy to like. Max grinned. You should marry him. We've talked about this, Commander Max. No moon weddings yet. Max groaned. Fine. But can I at least bring a ring pop next time? Daniel appeared in the doorway just then holding a file. Are you proposing to my boss again? He asked his son. Max grinned. Not yet. Victoria shook her head, smiling despite herself. He's a relentless campaigner. Wonder where he gets that from, Daniel said, eyes meeting hers. And this time she didn't look away. Wednesday. Lines cross. The day was madness, boardroom tension, a media leak, last-minute investor revisions. Victoria was running on caffeine and adrenaline when she walked into her office and found Daniel there, waiting. He looked calm, serious, like he had made a decision. I need to ask you something, he said. Make it quick, no. I mean something real. She paused, sat down slowly. Okay. He stepped closer. Do you feel what I feel, or am I imagining all of it? She opened her mouth, closed it again. I don't know what I feel, she whispered. But I know I'm terrified of losing what we already have. I'm not asking you to risk your company, aren't you? If this becomes something and it ends badly, then it ends badly, he said. But I'd rather crash trying than live pretending this isn't happening. Silence. The office suddenly felt too warm, too bright, too close. Daniel, I know. You're the boss. I'm the assistant. It's wrong on paper. It's a lawsuit on paper. But it's real in here, he said, tapping his chest. And I think you know that. She stared at him. For so long, he almost turned to leave. Then finally I do. One breath and it scares the hell out of me. He nodded, then smiled softly, gently. Good. Because the best things what we usually do, that night, a confession in the rain. It was raining again when she left the building. Daniel had offered to walk her to the car. Max was at home with a sitter. The city glistened in the wet streetlights, like it had something to say. They stopped under the awning watching taxis blur past. She turned to him. Why me? He blinked. What do you mean you could work anywhere? Date anyone? Why this mess? Why me? He took a step closer. Because you're strong and brilliant and impossible. And because I've seen the woman behind the title, and I like her. She breathed in, then out, then in again. And said, I don't know where this goes, me neither. We could wreck everything or build something better. She looked at him, and for once in her life, she didn't calculate the risk. She just nodded and let the rain fall around them as they stood together, silent, soaked, and sure of one thing. This wasn't just a maybe anymore. It was the beginning of something real. Thursday, 9 to 12 a.m. The hallway fell quiet when she walked past. It was subtle, too subtle for most people to notice. But Victoria noticed everything. The sideways glances, the too quick greetings, the sudden hush that replaced the usual office chatter. Something had shifted, and she knew why. It was never just one thing that triggered gossip in a corporate tower like Halcyon. It was a pattern. Two people leaving together, dinner once, twice, laughter in the elevator, one too many shared smiles, and now whispers. 10:30 a.m., executive roundtable. Victoria was sharp, composed. Every number that left her mouth was precise. Every slide she presented flawless. But she could feel it. Across the table, Marissa Caldwell, VP of Strategy, gave her a pointed look after asking, "Are we continuing to evaluate our internal HR policies on fraternization?" The room went still. Victoria didn't blink. "Yes," she said coolly. "Though I trust everyone at this table knows how to behave professionally regardless of what they do after 6 p.m. A pause, then a few polite chuckles. But the damage was done. The message was clear. They knew. 12:47 p.m., her office. Daniel knocked softly, entering with his usual notepad and something heavier in his expression. "You heard," she asked. "I'm not deaf," he said, sitting. "And it's not subtle. No, it's not. Want to call it off?" His voice was steady, calm. "If it puts your position at risk, I'll walk away." That hit her like a sucker punch. "You'd walk away from me if it kept you safe, yes." Silence. "Then don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then tell me what to do." She exhaled. "We keep things professional in the office. Period. No exceptions, no rumors fed. And outside the office, outside, we find out if this is real, or if it was just a moment we mistook for something more." He looked at her, then really looked. "It wasn't just a moment." She nodded. "I know." That weekend, her apartment. Victoria didn't host people. Ever. Her home was her fortress, a place of silence, order, and escape. But now, there were shoes at the door that didn't belong to her, a half-finished spaceship puzzle on the kitchen table, and the faint scent of peanut butter in the air. Max was curled up on the couch watching a cartoon. Daniel was beside him, one arm draped over the back of the sofa, relaxed. And Victoria stood in the kitchen doorway, a glass of wine in her hand, watching a life she never thought she wanted, but somehow had begun to crave. "We're invading your peace," Daniel said, sensing her thoughts. "No," she replied softly. "You're rearranging it," he smiled. "That a good thing? I don't know yet, but it's not bad." "Progress," he said. Monday, 7:33 a.m. Back at Halcyon, she wore her armor again. Power heels, power stride, power voice. But inside, she carried something new, a steady flame. "Until you have a visitor," her assistant said, poking her head in. "I'm not—" He said it's urgent, and he's from R. Victoria looked up, pulse sharpening. 7:41 a.m. Conference room B. The HR director and an older man named Leonard Griggs sat with a file open. "I'll be direct," he said. "There's been a formal concern raised about potential impropriety between a senior executive and her direct report." Victoria's hands curled into fists under the table. "Let me guess. No evidence, just optics." "It doesn't require evidence," he replied calmly. "It requires clarity, and right now, rumors are becoming a distraction. So what do you recommend? You either officially reassign Mr. Whitaker to a different team, or this escalates to a full investigation." She didn't speak. Her brain was doing the math, calculating moves, risk, perception, fallout. Then her heart cut in. She didn't want Daniel moved. She didn't want distance. She wanted the truth, the real version of her life, not the cold, curated shell she'd lived in for years. She looked up. "Give me 24 hours. That night on the on his porch, the rain had stopped, but the air still held the weight of the storm. Daniel stepped out, saw her standing there. "You okay?" "They want me to move you," he nodded slowly. "And are you—" "Not yet." She paused. "I spent years building this company. controlling every detail, managing every perception. But I think I finally realized what that perfection is lonely. She stepped closer. You and Max, you bring mess, unpredictability, chaos. We're good at that, but you also bring love, real love. And I don't want to lose that because someone in accounting thinks it's unprofessional. Daniel looked at her, eyes steady, voice low. Then don't, she smiled. I'm going to tell them the truth, which is that I'm in love with a single dim and that it's none of their damn business. He pulled her into his arms. That's a pretty good truth. Friday, Halcyon headquarters, 9:00 a.m. The auditorium buzzed with energy. The quarterly all-hands meeting was always a big event. Screens lit up across the room. Employees filled every row, some eager, some distracted, many whispering. But today, there was a tension in the air that had nothing to do with sales numbers. Everyone knew, or at least they thought they did. The CEO and her assistant. Late nights, smiles exchanged. The kind of gossip that traveled fast and grew teeth. And then Victoria walked in. She didn't flinch, didn't falter. She wore her signature navy suit, sleek bun-red lipstick like armor. But this time something was different. There was softness behind the steel. She took the stage. The room fell quiet. Good morning, she began, voice firm. Before we dive into numbers and forecasts, I want to take a moment to talk about something else. Something personal. The crowd stilled. I've heard the whispers, the speculation, and if I'm being honest, I've always prided myself on being untouchable professionally and personally. She let that sink in. But lately I've learned that perfection is a very lonely place to live. I've learned that leadership is not just about control, it's also about authenticity. Murmurs moved through the crowd like a slow ripple. Yes, I have feelings for someone who works here. And yes, I've struggled with what that means for the company, for our culture, for my own reputation. Daniel, standing off stage near the exit, froze. But I will not apologize for falling in love with someone who embodies every value this company stands for. Compassion, resilience, integrity. He didn't earn my respect because he worked for me. He earned it because I saw the way he loved his son, the way he treated people when no one was watching, the way he stood beside me, not behind me. A beat. This company was built on vision, on risk, on taking chances others were afraid of. So consider this my chance, my risk, my truth. She stepped back from the podium. Now let's talk Q3 projections. The room was silent for a full 3 seconds, then applause, scattered, then building, then thunderous. Not just for her honesty, but for the fact that someone finally said it, that success didn't require hiding who you were. Backstage, minutes later. Victoria stepped off stage, breath shaky. Daniel was there waiting. You did it, he said softly. I did. And your company didn't implode. Not yet, she whispered, smiling. But I've got a good assistant if it does. He took her hand. Victoria, she looked up. There's something I haven't told you. That evening, her apartment. Max was asleep in the guest room. A blanket covered him, one sock missing, as usual. Victoria and Daniel sat on the couch, the city lights glowing through the window. After Max's mom left, he began, I was lost. Not just emotionally, literally. Homeless for a while, couch surfing, trying to keep him fed, clean, safe. She blinked. Daniel, I don't say that to make you feel sorry for me. I say it because I don't think you understand how far I've come to sit here, to be here with you. He looked at her. You're not just the CEO. You're the first person in years who saw me as more than a survival story. She reached out, touched his hand. You're not just a story. You're the reason I started believing in second chances. Saturday morning, Max's first soccer game. The field was muddy. The kids were chaotic. The goalposts leaned sideways. But to Victoria, it was the most beautiful mess she'd ever stepped into. She sat in the bleachers beside Daniel, coffee in hand, cheering every kick, every missed shot, every accidental cartwheel. Max ran up at halftime, flushed and smiling. Did you see that pass? Boss lady saw it. Impressed, she said, high-fiving him. Daniel chuckled. He calls you that more than he calls me dad now. Well, I am running a pretty tight team, she teased. They shared a look. Warm, easy, natural. And in that moment, there was no office, no press, no boardroom, just a man, a woman, and a little boy who'd unknowingly stitched them together. 2 weeks later, a quiet Sunday. It wasn't anything big, no milestones, no declarations, just pancakes on a Sunday morning. Daniel stood at the stove flipping batter. Max sat cross-legged on the floor with a box of Legos, narrating an intergalactic mission. Victoria leaned against the kitchen doorway, a coffee mug in hand, wearing one of Daniel's flannel shirts. And for a brief moment, life wasn't a performance. No deadlines, no judgment, no board meetings or company drama, just being. And it was enough. Later, folding laundry. Victoria had never folded little socks before. It was weirdly intimate. Daniel chuckled as she examined a tiny Star Wars t-shirt like it was alien technology. You look terrified. I give TED Talks to Fortune 500s, and this is what undoes me. Welcome to real life, he said, sitting beside her. It's not always clean or easy, but it's ours. She paused, looked at him. Is it ours? He didn't blink. It is if you want it to be. I do. The words came out soft, but solid. I never thought I'd say that, she added, that I wanted a we. Daniel grinned. Turns out you're more human than legend. Don't tell the interns. It'll ruin the brand. Monday morning, one last test. Her phone rang before 9 a.m. It was the board's legal liaison. We need to finalize your statement regarding the relationship, the woman said crisply. There's still pushback from a few shareholders. Let them budge, Victoria replied calmly. They want written assurance that Daniel will step down or be reassigned. Victoria stared out the window. Her reflection stared back unblinking. No, she said. Excuse me, you can put it in the statement. I'm not choosing between love and leadership. If that's too much for them, they can call for a vote, a pause. Then you understand what that could mean. Yes, Victoria said, and I'm not afraid. That evening, her balcony, Daniel joined her with 2 glasses of wine. You told them, I did, and they're not thrilled, but they respect me. Because you earned it, he said, every inch of it. She looked at him. Do you ever wonder if this is too good to be real? Every day, he admitted. But then you burn the toast or try to fold socks sideways, and I think, yeah, this is as real as it gets. She laughed. You're never letting that go, are you? Nope, a breeze passed between them, quiet, warm. And she leaned her head against his shoulder, letting herself believe for once that she deserved this. Not just success, but joy, love, home. Saturday, boys, a birthday party with pizza and balloons. Max turned 6 with frosting on his nose and a superhero cape flapping behind him. Victoria helped serve cake. She took pictures. She let a 5-year-old braid her hair with purple glitter bands and didn't flinch once. Daniel caught her in a rare still moment, camera in hand. You look different, like I've been attacked by sugar and streamers, like someone who finally stopped running. She smiled. Maybe I have. Stay stopped, he said. I will. Then he pulled a small box from his pocket. It's not what you think, he said quickly as her eyes widened. It better not be a ring in front of 30 toddlers. It's not, he said. It's a key. She opened the box. Inside, a single silver key. To the house, he said. To us. No pressure. Just choice. She looked at it, then him. You always know exactly how far to go, don't you? With you, I'm still learning. But I'm trying. She closed the box gently. Ask me again when Max's friends aren't covered in slime. Deal. That night, tucking Max in, Victoria sat at the edge of the bed, brushing hair from Max's forehead. Hey, he murmured, half asleep. You're staying, right? She smiled. Yeah, Commander. I'm staying, even if Dad burns breakfast. Even then. Final scene. 1 month later, Victoria stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a picture frame. It wasn't her old office. It was their living room. Max's art hung beside award plaques. Her heels sat beside tiny light-up sneakers by the door. And Daniel's laugh echoed from the kitchen. This wasn't the life she planned. It was better. She thought hiring him would be a joke. He thought being noticed by her was impossible. But love doesn't follow resumes or office policies. It follows heart. And the moment she saw how he loved his son, She started to imagine what it would feel like to be loved the same way.